Yes, it's not what really excites me about the future. What really excites me about the future is game designers as architects. Game designers as people who build spaces in which experiences happen. Game designers as theme park builders. You know, it's now less about saying, you're going to come into this room and in order to complete this challenge, you're going to shoot through that window, hit that switch, which will open this door, and then you'll be able to progress. Now it's about looking at open world games like GTA and looking at the fact that you can just have fun going around there. You only have to look at YouTube to see all the videos that people have put up of, you know, here's the 600 crazy tricks I did on a motorbike. Hours of fun, not authored fun, but emergent fun. Games are rapidly becoming, and it's possible that game is a bad name for what this industry is becoming. It really doesn't matter, because that's the name we're stuck with. And it's just, force of habit is very strong. That's going to be what we call it until the dawn of time. It doesn't matter if we're doing, you know, survival horror stuff designed to cause people to crap their pants, or really, you know, dramatic, poignant tales about homelessness in modern America. They're still going to be called games. But nonetheless, there's this whole concept of how do you build a space that supports these experiences. And Charles Eames, who's one of the most famous designers in the 20th century, said about design that the role of designers is that of a host. You need to anticipate the needs of your guests and provide for their comfort. And it's about this second guessing of what people will do in that space and how to build an experience that is consistent, how to be a good host. This is very different from being the boss at the top of the pyramid who decides what the players are going to experience. And it's something that, you know, that the whole process of design in other fields, in architecture and furniture design and fashion design, it's something that they've struggled with for a long time. Does anyone here throw great dinner parties? Speaking of hosting, excellent. Give me a card when we're done. Yeah. Well, exactly. You know, and there's a whole skill to throwing a good party. It comes down to the people you invite into the space. It comes down to the things you set up for people to use. It comes down to the talking points. You know, it comes down to seating plans. It comes down to what you'll feed people. It comes down to how much booze you provide. You know, a lot of this is about cultivating a specific experience for people to have. And that, to me, is the exciting place that design is going. In some cases, it's already there. There are lots of games that show excellent usage of game as space in which experiences happen. But I really think that the near future holds some incredibly exciting progress along these lines. So, let's talk a bit about the role of a lead designer and how a lead designer acts developing these kinds of experiences. There's two axes for me on what a lead designer should do. There's the design side of things and the lead side of things. The design side of things is about this quality of the good host that I've spoken of. It's about deciding what the experience is that you want to provide. And, you know, a key party is a very different experience to a dinner for philosophers. You know, these are things that you would approach from very different angles. And it's really important as a designer coming at building these sorts of spaces to have an understanding of what sort of experience you want people to have in those spaces. These high-level decisions help to answer a lot of your low-level questions. And that really is the major thing that I want people to come away from this with, is an understanding of how to make high-level decisions, how to clarify high-level issues, such that low-level decisions are easy to make. So the first question that you have to ask yourself about your game is, what sort of party are you hosting? What is that experience? And this can be determined by a whole bunch of things. You know, some of us are fortunate enough to work on games where we start from scratch and get to create out of whole cloth. But in a lot of cases, we're not. In a lot of cases, we're limited by working on an IP, limited by working on a sequel, limited by working on what our bosses have told us that they want to see. And the important thing here is to boil all those questions down into, again, what is the experience? If you're working on an established IP, then that becomes a much easier question, because you know very early on what player fantasy is. You know if people are picking up the Kim Possible game, that going on a kill crazy rampage probably isn't the experience they're looking for. It's really straightforward. You know, the Kim Possible viewership is, the demographic is there, all the information about what sort of adventures she gets up to are there. These are really easy questions. Likewise for an IP like Star Wars. You know, you've got a lot of easy answers to your questions there about what sort of experience you might be wanting to provide. And for me, the next step from there is to come up with the highest level values of what the game experience is going to be. And you'll end up with 4 or 5 of these, depending on the scope of your project, depending on what technology you have to hand, depending on what the earliest decisions you've made are. And these should all be high-level decisions that can drive low-level high-level values that can drive low-level decisions. I'll give you an example of this. You may decide that high-level value of your game is that it will support stealth gameplay. And that's a perfectly fine decision to make. You can then go into a lot of mechanics and start thinking about how stealth is appropriate. It's really easy to see how that leads you in a different direction for building a game, how you might end up with something like a Splinter Cell or a Metal Gear Solid, versus, let's take something like Mario, where there isn't that high level value in place. If you're sitting down with Mario and going, should we put in a stealth level? It becomes an easier question to deal with on that low level. It's not something that supports the high level objectives. That doesn't mean it can't exist. And in fact, if you look at Zelda 64, then you've got a stealth mission in there. All of these support the high level concepts of Zelda and high level player fantasy, but they're not directly attached. The next level down from values is design philosophies. And these, to me, are less the high-level drivers and more the mid-level decisions that give you a broader knowledge across the entirety of the game. So at the top level, you might have values that will be applicable everywhere. Like the game will be forgiving, the game will support stealth gameplay, the game will be obvious for players to pick up, and the game is targeted to 16 to 17-year-old women. It's a very interesting shape of a game that you put together from that perspective. But at the next level down are things that enable you to make day-to-day decisions. And these could be things like, because we're targeted at 16 to 17-year-old women, and because our usability tests show that they're not too familiar with modal controls, holding down the shoulder button gives you a completely different set of actions for the face buttons, we won't use modal controls. It's a very simple rule. It's at the level which it cuts out a whole bunch of options and a whole bunch of questions as to how you go forward. And that's good, because constraints are what help to shape your design. By constraining the area of infinite possibility down to something, you can actually go about making a game, which is often the hardest thing to do when you have an entire world of possibility ahead of you. So long as these constraints support your values, and they can be simple things like you will always be able to back out of a menu using the B button, which, simple, straightforward, it can go up on a list of rules, and it's really easy for everybody to understand. The great thing about all of these approaches is they let people make decisions without you being the bottleneck. By setting up a stage in which people understand what the rules are by which design decisions are made, you stop having to make the design decisions. You enable people to actually have the low-level understanding to go and do the job, to go and do the work. And it stops designers from being arbitrary and somewhat praised overlords, which is something. How many of you here actually do design?